folks. Headed on way over to the house for remodeling. It's kind of an exciting day. Hanging drywall today, so we're gonna go check that out. It's a Saturday, but crew's over there hanging, or at least they're supposed to be. So we're gonna make the drive over and see what it looks like. This is when you can really begin to see what things are going to look like in its final stages. So kind of let us know whether we made a good decision or not, but stay tuned. Alright folks, here we are, pulling in. We'll see what things are going to look like. I don't know how long they've been here, how much they've got hung, but we're fixing to go check it out. As you can see, as I walk through here, the guys were really just getting started hanging. They'd started upstairs, and they got to a large portion of the ceilings and the upper half of the walls hung. But we're just really getting going. You can see there that blue drywall is a moisture resistant drywall that's required around any water areas. So that's why that's there. And you can see as I continue to walk through here what they've got done. And this is a day or two later when they've got everything hung. You can see all the drywall up. See up here, they've already got a good bit of taping done. Kind of dark probably this morning, but see they're getting a good start on the taping. Hopefully that gives you a pretty good view. I don't know how well we're picking all this up this morning. By the end of the week, they'll probably be real close in this drywall. We'll kind of be over the hump on the inside. Usually once you get the drywall finished, it's kind of a downhill process. So stay tuned. Seth, I guess we'll get that sprayer cleaned out good. Spray this porch ceilings. Spray that sealer. Yeah. Spray that poly on these porch ceilings and they'll be ready to run that crown then. Look, run that.
I didn't run much of it.
In that bucket, be cleaning that bucket out. That's pretty doggone clean now. All right, here you can see us starting to spray that poly on the porch ceilings. The product we use here is a Minwax waterborne poly, an exterior. Really like this product. It does a really good job and it dries really hard. Doesn't want to gum up, kind of like oil-based polys will. And then here you can see we've moved around to the front, getting that sprayed, Seth spraying it. And you kind of see the process, how you just, keep the guy that's spraying, moving the benches down for him, so he's just stepping from bench to bench, not having to crawl up and down. Again, just a way of speeding the process up a little bit. Here they sent, I don't know if I told them to or not, boy, they sent smooth doors. That ain't gonna be no fun. Yeah, I wish it had sent texture doors. They're much easier to paint or touch up. Here you can see the guys starting to set the doors, getting started on the trim. We use a split jamb door usually. I know some people like flat jambs, but I like the split jambs a little better. It's just easier to adjust in the wall, and you know, don't have to worry about having your sheetrock and your jamb exactly the same thickness. If there's a little difference in the thickness of the jambs with the sheetrock, you know, it's easier to adjust. And here you see we're going back, getting all the dust off the walls, getting ready to start priming. You know, the more dust you can knock down before you get started, the easier it is to come back when you start your sanding. You know, having to sand quite as much. And here we are getting the vacuum cleaner set up, vacuuming out all the receptacle holes. If you don't vacuum out these holes and you roll across them, your roller will pick up trash, and that'll wind up on your wall. So it's another kind of overlooked step sometime in new construction, but it's one that, you know, makes your finish a lot easier. And you can see there the roller that we're using is an 18-inch roller, and it's you know, it's connected on both ends of the roller frame, which I really like because it keeps kind of equal pressure on the walls as you roll. A lot easier to keep roller marks out of the wall. You know, with a 9-inch roller connected just on one side of the roller frame, you have to torque your roller just a little bit to carry your roller mark down the wall as you roll, and you'll roll it to the corner, and then you'll come back with your paintbrush when you cut the corner in and catch that roller mark. But with these wide rollers with pressure on both sides of the roller, it doesn't seem to want to leave a roller mark near as bad. But there you can see Seth continuing to prime those walls in, and you know, using the sprayer. Basically, all the sprayer is the applicator. You know, it just keeps you from having to dip your roller in a bucket or a pail to get paint on it and then go to the wall. By using the sprayer, it just speeds the process up a bunch. Maybe fogging our lens up, you can't see it. All right, folks, we'll give you a little kind of update on what we're doing here. We're priming the walls with a PVA primer. It's a step a lot of people don't do, but you know what it does, it eliminates you being able to see your sheetrock joints in the wall. If you put a PVA on it, even if you two coat it with regular paint, you know, put two coats. If you stand at an angle and you look down the wall, you can always see where the sheetrock joints are at. With PVA, you know, it will eliminate about 95% of that. And the other thing it does is when they sand drywall, it'll cause some of the fibers to stand up. So what this does is it'll cause those fibers to stand, and then we can come back with a sanding pole and sand them real quick and knock all those fibers down, and your walls have a much smoother texture to them. And like I said, it does away with 95% of those sheetrock joints. But that's what we got going on right now, and it's a step, you know, that a lot of people don't do, but it's worth its weight in gold as far as finish on your paint. Painters don't like to do it with a little extra work and a little extra money, but you know, if you're doing your own, I would suggest definitely doing a PVA. Here you can see we've moved into the kitchen and the living room area, continuing to put that PVA on the wall. And you know what that really does is it really seals the sheetrock, which, like I said, really gives you a much smoother finish when you're doing your final coats. Really eliminates a lot of the sheetrock joints, like I said, in the walls there that you see. And then here you can see we're starting on the ceilings, spraying the ceilings. And again, you know, on the ceilings we always use a flat paint. The problems with ceilings is you're looking down the boards always. So any kind of blemish, anything in the drywall, it really shows up if you put a any kind of sheen on your ceilings. So we always put a flat on the ceilings. And you can see here that we're using just the color we actually used here was an alabaster. So it's got just a little tinge of brown or tan or color to it, but really, if you walk into it, it looks white, but you can see it there against that white PVA. You can see that little bit of color. And here we are setting up the scaffold. These ceilings in this living room are about probably 18 foot high, so we're having to set up the scaffold here to be able to get up and paint these ceilings. But you can see this process. We got two of us up here on the scaffold and somebody down on the bottom going to move it for us. Just trying to get everything set up here and get ready to go. You can see Mario down there at the bottom moving us around. So just, again, speeds the process up a little bit. Here, we're just wiping down the spider webs. It's amazing how many spiders can be in something that, hadn't even been hung more than a week. You get spiders already up in the corners. And there you see one of us will do one's half of the wall and the other, or one half of the ceiling, and the other will do the other half. And Mario will just move us back and forth move us back down the length of the room until we get all that done. All right, folks, I'll give you a little crown cutting lesson here. Talk about cutting crown. How do we cut crown? Well, there's two ways you can cut crown molding. If one way requires a compound miter saw, and the other one you can do it with just a normal miter saw. And I'll show you the normal miter saw cut first. So let me get everything set up right here, and I'll try to show you that. To do it on a normal miter saw, you have to have your crown molding upside down and backwards. In other words, your right's your left and your bottom's your top. So what I've got here is I've got my bottom profile up, and this one's really my left side. So what I'm doing is I bed my saw, and I bed my crown mold. You have to make sure your crown mold bedded right. And then you cut on just a 45-degree angle. You set your miners on 45, and then you can make your cut. Let's give you your bed. You need to cut that. Yeah. All right, again. Bottom's at the top, left's at the right. You just set your saw down on a 45-degree angle. Make sure you're properly bended and you make the cut. That gives you your cut. If you've got a compound miter, which makes this a whole lot easier, you've got two settings on your saw that you got to be mindful of. All right, your first one, right here on your angle on your saw, if you see right here, you've got this little mark. It's a 31.6. All right, you set your degree to that. Most of these saws have got a locking point on them to do that. And then the other one is back here on your bevel. And if you look on the back of your saw, at least this one, not all of them have these, but on this one, if you look, you've got these little lugs. If you look right there, you can probably see that one's a 22.5. So if that's pushed all the way back, that's going to set this bevel on a 22.5. But the one under that is a 33.86, and that's the one for the crown. And if you set that there, bevel your saw over, it'll stop right there. And if you notice right here, it puts you on this little mark here, which is that 33.86
33.86, which is what you're cutting. I'm sorry, 30. Did I say that wrong? So that's, yeah, 33. So that's 30, 1, 2, 3. And if you notice, this is off just a little bit from 34, the little notch on the thing. But it's these symbols are the ones that you need to set your saw on. The little half circle symbols are the ones you need to set your saw on to cut your crown. And then it doesn't really matter which way the crown's oriented. You can cut it either way. It's just a matter of flipping your bevel. Here would be the proper orientation for this piece, because I got the bottom towards my bed of my saw, but I've got one sitting right here that's oriented the other way, and I won't bed it because it's, well, let me slide it around there. Here I've got it bedded, and now the only thing I have to do is change this angle. And now I'm making that cut again, which is the way I would probably cut it. That way it's oriented in a way that I'm looking at it on the wall. But that's the gist of how you cut it. Now you do have to do some flipping back and forth here with your bevels. If you're cutting the other side, of course you would have to flip your bevel back the other way. But or flip your piece of crown around, which is a lot more work. But I'll kind of let you see me cut this first piece. And that's it. All right, I'm running this one down this wall. So what I do on it is, instead of cutting my bevel on the end of my board on a 45, I'll just keep it on this 33.86 and use that, and that way I'm not having to flip the one that don't have a clip on, the one that's got the clip on it. You leave them, you lose them. That's what. Hey, that's what happens when a carpenter ain't wearing a nail apron.
32, make it 32 and a half.
I'll let you cut them. All right, folks. Let's finish this up. But anyway, like I was saying, instead of putting my bevel back there on a 45, I just do it on my 33.86, and that way I'm not having to change my bevel all the time. Another little way to increase your productivity a little bit. So I'll show you that. So right here, instead of this, being a 45, we did the 33.8, and then you just do the same thing coming around the other way when you do your bevel back here. So just a way of increasing the productivity, and in all honesty, it fits a little better. I usually, when I'm lap joint stuff and not using something like this, I'll do a 22 and a half there, because you just get it fits a little bit better. Got a little shorter angle, doesn't have as much bevel to have to lap over where if there's a little hump or something, it can cause it to protrude. But anyway, that's just a little professional pointer, I guess.
And here we are starting to run that crown around the top of this porch ceiling. I really like the contrast here between the stained ceiling and the painted porch beams and posts. I think aesthetically it's a really good look. And then the detail, just that little offset in those posts when you run this crown around it, the detail around the top of it, I think is another thing that really gives it some flash. And you know, when you walk out on these porches, it's a really fancy look, but really like it. And we kind of come about that by accident because, you know, normally you would either cut that post off even with the bottom of that beam, and you'd have to pack that beam out wider so you didn't have any edge sticking over. You'd have a little edge sticking over. And if you have that, you'll have birds trying to build a nest on it. So that's the reason we started notching the post. And then when we ran the crown around them, we saw how fancy it really looked, and we really liked it. So now it's become more of an aesthetics thing than really a practical, you know, doing it for a practical purpose. We just really like the look of it. But really gives it some detail out there on the front porch. And here we are starting to cut up some 1x to make the wood surrounds for the windows on the inside for the trim. And we're kind of a bad example here using this table saw. This is one of the most dangerous saws you got on the job, and you shouldn't be running your hand all the way down by the blade like we're doing right there. We should be using a board to do that. But you know, you do this every day, you get used to using the tools, and you don't really think about it a whole lot. We've been fortunate not to lose no fingers, but if you're going to use one of these, use a board to push it through. Save yourself some fingers there.
There was a long and lean, the color of the sun, and his eyes are green. He had nerve and he had wood, never was honest like a Tennessee stud. All right, folks, I'm going to give you a summary of what we're doing here. We're doing the wood surrounds for the windows. Using a staple gun to shoot these together. The staples just hold a whole lot better. Just trim staples. I'll show you them right here in just a sec. But you can see, this is what we're using. Shoot them together with. That way you can see that. But yeah, it's 1.25 inches. Little 18 gauge staple, and then we'll go ahead and trim out our surround before we even stick it in. It's self-marking the reveal there.
And here I am starting to do some of the caulking around all the trim now. And you know, it's when you're doing this, you know, you need to keep you a wet rag with you. You'll see here. So, you know, wipe this. You take a wet rag and smooth your caulking back out. It's much easier than, you know, a lot of people just wipe it with your finger like I'm doing there. But if you can take that wet rag and dampen your finger, so it keeps that pull smoother. And because you've got almond colored window sashes here and white caulking, you know, I'm going back and wiping that sash good, making sure there's no caulking lapping up on that almond color on those window sashes. But you know, there's when you you don't realize how many little cracks and crevices there are until you start caulking something, and it's like, my goodness, there's 1,000 little places that have to be caulked.
And the most important thing on hole filling is when you fill them, not to leave what we call a fish eye. which is that little, and I don't know if you can see it right here, but that little bit right there at the top. If you leave that little crack, it's going to show. So you got to take your time, almost pull it from 4 different directions, and I found out it diffused the back side of your fingernail. You do that, it seems to do a much better job. But you see there, got that one. Both those holes filled, and I know that seems so insignificant, but the truth is, the prep's where the paint job's at. The better job you do prepping, the better your paint job's going to be. You can't put enough paint on the wall or enough paint on the trim to fill up those holes. If you leave those little fish eyes, they're always going to bleed back through. And you know, as you go around, like here's one, and I know we done been around multiple times, but if I get it up real close, maybe you can see it right there. That tiny little bit at the top, it's going to show. So there you are, fixed. So here you can see I'm starting to go around and start to sand everything. So I'll kind of give you the rundown of the order here. You prime, you know, then you prep with your caulking and your hole filling, and then you sand. And that's what we're doing now, getting everything sanded. All right, folks, we're getting ready to do our final coat on the walls and trim. So we'll get in and get everything cleaned up, vacuumed up, so we're not blowing dust around. You can see a lot of good old red Georgia mountain before. We've had some rain. We've been tracking through it, tracking it in. So, but we're gonna get it cleaned up, vacuumed, ready for a coat. Anyway, that's what we're doing. You know, it's a funny thing when you're doing construction. It seems like you do as much cleaning as you do working most of the time, constantly. You know, in every phase and process of construction, you're having to make a mess and then clean it up. All right, folks, we're getting ready to finish coating everything. So, you know, we're still finalizing a little bit of the prep work. Mario's going around taping on windows, so we're going to get overspray on the window sashes. Says finishing up the wall sanding upstairs. I'm fixing to get ready to start spraying this trim. But and luckily, you know, we're gonna go ahead and spray the trim first, and we'll spray them back around the walls. And we're using all the same color, so you know, drenching it. So, but the trim will go in a gloss. The wall will go in a low luster, eggshell, you know, whatever you want to call it, satin. But we're using a cashmere on the walls, and we're using a urethane base trim coat that's emerald urethane from Sherwin-Williams. So, you know, should get a pretty good finish with both those. But that's what we're using. I'll show you the cans here in a second, but we're gonna get going spraying here. I'm planning a little more prep on this one, so I'll probably skip and get on one of these others. We just caught those ones this morning, so I don't know that they've been sanded. I'm gonna skip down and get to this one over here. We are using a little 211 tip in the spray, and that's and that 2. What that means is you take that number in 12 inches, you can double it, and that gives you your fan width. So at 12 inches away from the window, we basically got a 4-inch fan on our spray when it comes out. And then the 11 is just the size of the actual orifice in the gun. But course, I'll pick up some trash and bring it back. Well, that stuff is thin, because there's some weight on it. And I bet that's gonna run. So as you can see there, not everything goes exactly to plan always. That real thing. No, it goes on very, very smooth. I got the pressure real high on my gun. So it's always a little bit of a trial and error when you do this. Especially on the first one, so hopefully turning that pressure down will alleviate some of that heaviness. And I'm just going to be careful not to move slow with the gun.
Oh.
So wasp looking for a place to hibernate. Really get matters which one. No, this way.
All right, here we are, just getting a little paint in the roller. That's all we're doing there. So this roller's not dry rolling the wall. Even though you spray it, if you don't get your roller saturated, it just pulls at the paint when you start coating the walls. And you can see here, we're starting with the first of the finish coats. We'll put 2 coats on these walls, even though we've already primed them with that PVA, because if you don't, especially using, like we're using an eggshell or a low luster finish here, satin finish, you'll see sheen marks in the wall. If you look down the wall, you'll see spots where the sheen is, the flat sheen is bleeding through on the eggshell. So regardless of whether you prime them with PVA or not, you're still gonna have to go back and put 2 coats on them unless you want to see those sheen marks through the wall. And truthfully, it needs that anyway. Just to have a protective finish on the wall, something that's easy to clean, wipe down.
I also give you a little pointer here. The reason we back roll, not just spray them, is because they're so smooth when they're sprayed that if you ever have to touch them up, you'll see brush marks in them. You put a little texture on them with a roller, and that eliminates any spots when you have to touch it up. So that's the point of back rolling.
Here you can see us setting up to start spraying the doors, and you see our little setup there. We just screw a board to the top of it and lean it against the wall so you get to both sides of the door and spray both sides of the door without having to wait on it one side to dry. And these sprayers really make this much easier, especially using this acrylic enamel. It just flows out so smooth, almost a glass-like finish on the doors when you're through.
You might take a little foam roller to the edges. Oh, let me see, 'cause I didn't have it found. Little Geico gecko, even though he's not a gecko. All right. Serve him his eviction notice. Put him back out. Just warm on that back porch. He'll be. You right back in here. Well, it's warm back here. He'll sit out in the sun. Get on. God, he's done turned to brown. Look how quick he turned to brown. Pretty amazing. He's done went from green to brown. Just a few seconds.